I want to bring us back into some basics, because the more people I talk to, the more I realize there's a lot of foundational information that we kind of gloss over because we are 20, 25, 30 years deep into our careers, and there is still a lot of misinformation out there. I just personally came from Phoenix, where Tyler Mayer and Paul Ravella and I shot some curriculum videos for the National Academy of Metabolic Science. Had a great time to chat with them about what they do with their audience and with social media. And, I realize that sometimes we get a little too technical.
I would agree with you. I am constantly bombarded with questions from clients that force me to go back, like you said, 20, 25 years to when I first started learning about nutrition and I think we didn't call them macros back then.
Right.
It was macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats. What are they? Why are they important? And it's a challenge.
So let's go back there.
Okay.
I had a conversation with these guys, and when I asked them, I said, how far does it go back? Where do you think the first coach was in nutrition in terms of the kind of physique culture, or at least weight loss industry? And Paul said Joe Weider.
Oh.
That was his first step.
Okay.
So I thought, of course, there could have been other people along the way, but he said he was probably the first person who embraced clients and said, we need to do something with nutrition to make you look a certain way, get healthier, get leaner, of course, for physique, sport, and bodybuilding. At the Diet Doc, we branch into a lot of different areas, from that kind of performance as well as general population goals, performance goals. So that did make me think, how many steps removed are we from that?
And well, let's go back a little ways to personally. Like you say Joe Weider, and I recognize the name, but I wasn't immersed in that part of the culture until way later.
Well, it's a short family tree. So you've got somebody like him. If you say he is the father of the fitness industry, certainly of bodybuilding, but
I have Jack LaLanne in mind. Isn't he older?
Maybe about the same age. I mean, they both passed away, but kind of that same era of people who were, bringing fitness into popular culture. But here's the interesting thing. Of course, Joe Weider had a media empire. So he grew the audience before there was social media, internet, that kind of thing. So within his magazines, there were a couple people who started writing articles about nutrition, primarily bodybuilding nutrition. Not until I started writing for Natural Bodybuilding and Fitness was anybody doing any actual coaching as an industry. There were always a few personal trainers around. The personal training industry really started to create itself in the 1990s. Before that didn't even exist. That's how short this is. So a couple people were writing articles and all that. I did the same thing in the natural bodybuilding and fitness world. I was writing articles, and I was hitting on all of these things like macronutrients. And the very first insight I had was also from that bodybuilding culture. And I had a personal trainer that was recommended to me, a guy who was managing a gym, and he just simply Xeroxed copies of Flex magazine articles from their nutrition guy. And that's what everybody did. Here, eat tuna fish, eat rice, eat broccoli.
Everyone's following the same plan, eating the same foods.
So me being the rebel that I am, I said, well, what if I don't want what's on this list? What if I want other foods? Well, you can't. You've got to eat what's on this list. So this was in the early 90s, mid 90s, actually early 90s, 92, 93.
Early 90s, Joe. I was still in high school.
Okay,
I was born. I graduated in 96, so yeah.
So I start looking at nutrition fact panels. I start thinking, okay, if this person wants me to eat 4 ounces of chicken or a can of tuna fish or a cup of rice, what's actually in this? And can I simply make an exchange? So my little guru guy, this manager of a little small private gym who had a little cadre of bodybuilders that he would get ready for contests. I'm from across the state. I'm not even in this group. this is really funny. Do you know how I like let him know what I was doing nutritionally?
You took a picture. No, did we have cell phones back then?
No. I had to mail a nutrition journal. Put stamps on it.
All right.
Put it in the mail. And so I started questioning, like, why? What if I want to eat something different?
Yeah.
What if, and my big things were I wanted peas instead of green beans. What if I wanted something snacky because it was cheap, like animal crackers that you could get
a massive bag of them. Yes.
5-pound bag. And of course the answer was always no. So I just said, well, screw you. I can figure out the nutrition panel. So I just started eating the amount of food that I thought would be right based on that. So then I started writing about it. So now we're in the late 90s. I had earned my pro card. And now I'm writing for a publishing company that had 4 or 5 fitness magazines of different genres.
How'd you get along with that coach?
It was pretty short-lived. Yeah, he didn't like people bucking the system.
No.
Yeah, he moved on. I moved on.
When you won your pro card, was he still coaching you?
No, I would say he never really coached me. He was just somebody that, because he had one of my friends in his little group. I was getting some feedback.
Okay.
Sat down with him one time, and then eventually, I did move into the same city. He was in Evansville, Indiana. I moved down. He moved out of the state. But all of that just simply started this process of me looking at nutrition flexibly. We didn't call it flexible dieting.
No.
But now picture this. I remember almost like this scenario vividly. In 1996, I recall having purchased this small training facility, a 3,000 square foot gym. I had a couple trainers working for me by then, and I'm doing nutrition consulting. I'm trying to grow this nutrition consulting business because that's the need people had. I saw other people just starting to give advice that wasn't necessarily good, and I just innately started creating systems, helping people. If you were to sit down with somebody with any topic that you felt you knew a lot about, you would just start educating, you would teach, you would guide, you would counsel.
Yes.
So that started a process of me creating notes and systems and information to give clients, and it just became something so organic for me to let them have the same choices that I found freedom in. So I would give them macronutrient ranges. This was the etiology of saying, here's how much protein you should have, carbs, fat, and I would give them a food count book.
I have that book.
Because the internet still didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I would, we would do that. That's what we did. We did flexible dieting, macronutrient-based dieting before it was called anything. And then I was writing about that in the magazines. So it started catching on a little bit. People were buzzing about it. And in these particular magazines were the places everybody in the industry went for information, pre-internet. So people like Eric Helms, people like Lane Norton, those are the guys who hired me and came to my workshops when I was on the coasts. And so all this information was forming their basis of nutrition. So by the time I started doing this as a business model, 2001 rolls around, and I placed an ad in a magazine. Dr. Joe's Perfect Peaking, a little 3rd-page ad, and I just thought,
let's see what happens.
Maybe somebody would hire a nutrition person, like maybe this is a need. There was nothing like it around, and inquiries start trickling in. Pretty soon, my entire business is evolved and is revolving around nutrition coaching. So when you see the stats like, more than 400 pro cards won, more than 150 pro titles, more than 50 world champions, that was all within that 10 to 15 year period that started right then. And that created an entire generation of nutrition coaches. I asked Paul Rivella this weekend, I said, now, how many people do you think make a living doing nutrition coaching? And he said, probably 100,000. And there are people who make more than $1 million a year doing nutrition coaching, all from that little office in Evansville, Indiana, in this little gym, from somebody just saying, hey, why don't we have flexibility? But 20 years or so go by, And now we have this pendulum that has swung so far that it's created kind of a division in the nutrition culture where people do this all the time. I had an email just the other day. Somebody said, hey, I heard about you, somebody recommended you. Are you a meal plan coach or are you a macro coach? So now there's this dichotomy.
Interesting, isn't it?
Where you are pressed to, well, why can't I be both?
Yeah.
Maybe some people need meal plans and structure. Of course, I'm a fan of flexibility since this person didn't know that, but this is kind of where it all started. So what I would love to hear from you is, as somebody who came into the industry when it was already formed to some degree.
Sure, yeah.
Now it has evolved. What's your experience just in macro-based dieting?
So I was personally working on losing weight when I must have been 23, I think around 23. So that was in the early 2000s. And I was also in graduate school at the time, and I was taking advanced nutrition, and I was learning about all the formulas to figure out your BMR and how much food you need, and the Harris-Benedict equation, which I still use, but that's what I use to figure out what I should be eating, and proteins, carbs, and fats. So when I started,
that was already an established thing.
It was already established. It wasn't called macros, and it wasn't if it fits your macros, and it wasn't flexible dieting. It was I was just trying to lose weight, and I was going to the gym, and there was nothing about that had any link to bodybuilding at that time for me until a couple of years later when I was in the gym. And a woman approached me and she said, "You probably do really well competing." And I'm like,
"What's that?
What are you talking about? What's competing? Like, I know there's all kinds of competing. What are you referring to?" And she said bodybuilding. And I started reading some magazines. I started reading Oxygen Women's Fitness and went to a camp. So it was, and the coaches that I became acquainted with were like Mike Davies and Kim Odo. Those were the only two that I really knew of in the industry. And then when I decided that I was going to start competing, that's when I started doing a little bit more research, and you showed up in my search. But like I said, it was already established, and there was a guy in the gym, it was the owner of the gym, who was kind of guiding me and giving me a little bit of mentorship, like your coach did initially, and he gave me a meal plan. He said, "This is what would be really good for you to eat," and it was chicken and sweet potatoes and broccoli all the time. And I don't ever remember doing that.
So you immediately went off the range on that?
Yeah. I never ate sweet potatoes. That wasn't a normal part of my nutrition. And so I was like, I'm not just going to eat them because he's telling me to. And it was kind of the same thing. There are other things that can fit just as well and work.
And the knowledge in the industry was already proliferating enough that you just could figure that out. Like I don't need to eat this, I can eat something else.
I was already tracking my food and creating my own meal plans when I was losing weight. I was already doing that. So
here's an interesting next step in the evolution of the industry, is that from the time I started to maybe about halfway between that point and now, there was still a pretty big line between normal general population fitness and nutrition and that kind of physique culture world. And I operated on that continuum for a long time, thinking, well, these are two separate audiences,
They need different things.
But now, because of social media, anybody who was just simply doing a search like you could be a 60-year-old attorney, you could be a 30-year-old stay-at-home mom, you could be anybody doing anything, And you just start doing those searches, and everybody comes up,
Yes.
including the hardcore physique culture people. So those are the ones. When you look at the audiences these days, all of the friends we have in the industry that have 1 million YouTube subscribers or 250,000, those are not all competitive people. Those are everyday Gen Pop people. So I've had to work to kind of eliminate that gap. There are no longer two roads, two different sets of people. Everybody has access to the same information.
Yeah.
We're all doing the same thing. You may or may not end up on a stage or on a track or in the NFL.
The outcomes we're looking for are different,
Absolutely.
but we can get to them in much the same way.
So let's transition because of what you said. Your initial
Kind of
planning,
introduction planning.
was here's a meal plan, and this is where people have completely created this false dichotomy and almost a cultish war because online people make fun of each other for this now, and the most pretentious group are the flexible dieters. They are the ones who are saying, oh, you're just meal plan people, blah, 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 blah. That's like so rigid and stupid and you don't have to eat the same thing.
Like they're doing absolutely no planning at all.
I can eat anything I want. That's why we're so much smarter than you people. And, you and I both did that initially out of sheer need and survival because we know rigid meal plans don't work.
Yeah.
They're too restrictive. You need some flexibility.
They don't work for very long. They can work for a little while until you're ready to eat something else.
Yeah. So let me give you another little story of a recent client who hired me, and she did ask me that question. Are you a meal plan coach or are you a macro coach? So I said, well, what are you interested in? And she said, well, she really needs support and guidance, would love to have a meal plan. I said, absolutely, we'll do a meal plan. So as soon as I send her that meal plan, she's like, she starts sending me food logs that are completely different.
That have things that she typically eats and enjoys.
Completely different. No, I even made her meal plan that had all those foods.
Yeah, this is normal.
But then she said, well, sometimes I can't get that all in, and my day was a little different, and I said, okay, totally fine. But then she even made the point, I really don't know if we're connecting. I don't know if I'm getting the support I need. I said, okay, first of all, we've only been communicating for 2 days.
Yeah.
Second of all, I gave you exactly what you asked for. Now you're asking for flexibility, which is totally fine.
Yep.
But this is my point, Kori. It doesn't have to be either or. I think about it like this. I was in the airport, and I'm watching this little toddler. And this little toddler's just like bing, 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 bing everywhere, bouncing off the walls. But then would always come back to dad.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm thinking, what a great metaphor for this, in that this little child needs everything from the parent: structure, security, safety, just everything that makes that child able to survive, but they still want to explore and look at things when they want to look at things, right? It's not either or. You don't hover over your child or just throw them out in the woods. You do both. So with clients, and you know where I'm going with this, with clients, with us, you and I, we're going to talk about the way we eat. You, no matter how advanced you are or how novice you are, you will always have some continuum of structure and planning and support that is, dare I say, rigid, except that you can also be flexible. You can change that. You can change it anytime you want.
And that's really going to operate on a continuum for every person. I'm much more rigid than you are, I think. I've got some principles and some very bright lines and boundaries around what I will and won't eat and when and how and what I'm going to put in my body.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You don't need that, but you find that it helps you. So let's talk about structure first.
Okay.
Because any endeavor that we embark on that's new, we do need some structure.
Oh, yes.
If I'm going to build a bookshelf, I'm probably going to do a lot better if I have the instructions.
Or a list of the supplies that you need to purchase in order to put it together.
I'm not going to just dump 200 pieces on the living room floor and then start freewheeling it and expect this thing to come out right.
No, that wouldn't work out well.
I've probably tried, but it reminds me of, when my son said, "Hey Dad, can you help me change the brakes on my car?" I'm like, okay, first of all, no, because I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how.
And I don't know if you want to trust me doing that, but then he was so gung-ho, I said, sure, let's go give it a shot. So did we just embark on a flexible thing? Did we take the wheels off and say, let's just try and figure this out?
Let's hope we can put it back together.
Yeah, no. I put my phone right there.
Yes.
And I went to YouTube and found a video step by step of how to do this, because I needed, in that moment, maximum structure. I didn't have room for any flexibility. Any flexibility at all would have been a danger, an impediment, and it would have ruined my process. It would have wrecked the car. It could have endangered my son's life.
Yep.
And so that is a time where you just need 100% structure. And some people, and these, remember, we're talking about these pretentious ass coaches who would say, oh, I'm so flexible. Who would do a meal plan? Well, there are some people who need an exact step-by-step meal plan to start.
And thrive. Yes.
Yeah, just to start.
Well, to get some stability.
Right.
To feel grounded. Yeah.
And this is where I want to link you in, because you are somebody who has a degree in exercise physiology, and you're a clinical nutrition consultant, and you're the vice president of a company that does this. So if anybody could be 100% flexible, it's you. But the opposite of that 100% need for structure, being 100% flexible,
that's just chaos.
Could be chaos. Exactly.
It's chaos.
Yeah.
Structure gives me the ability to have flexibility and freedom. We've talked about this before, just in terms of like scheduling. I time block, because that means that I have the end of the day to do what I want with.
Yeah, this is your Bible right here, your schedule.
Yeah, we'll show this to everyone later, but without that, my schedule will just be all over the place. I'd be working until midnight, doing the things that I should have done earlier, but it would be so flexible and freeing. And then I wouldn't have a relationship, and I wouldn't be able to ride my bike, and I wouldn't be able to prep my meals or work out.
Yeah. And the point between these two things is, if you go to one extreme and you just guard that turf as if that is the way to be, then you're missing the point that we need both, and we can use both as tools to give us the ultimate goal we want, which is we want the best results, which you could say tilts us toward the structure side. I need that game plan, I need a coach, I need somebody to tell me what to do, but I also want to have a real life, and I want to be able to enjoy other aspects of the world, and so that could be flexible. So at any given time, we can operate on that continuum that works for us. So I'm gonna ask you what you think about this as a clinician. When I was in my heyday of coaching competitors and general population clients, we had this massive local company and worldwide presence. I was still competing myself, and I had an extremely busy schedule, and so I thought I needed maximum flexibility. I wouldn't even take the time necessarily to do food prep like I used to. When I was in college, one day a week would be food prep time. I would have all the food in the refrigerator and just ready to go, weighed, measured, and I just knew what I was going to eat. Well, I evolved to the point where I needed more flexibility and time, so I would use just a sticky note. I would have a little piece of paper in my pocket, and I knew how much protein, carbs, and fat I wanted every day. I'm a detail, analytical, statistician kind of guy. But what I would do on that little piece of paper is just write my protein, carbs, and fat. If I had 6 egg whites and a half a cup of oatmeal, I would be okay, 24 grams of protein, 27 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat, put it in my pocket. Then the next time I'm hungry, or it's time to eat, I have time to eat, it's like, okay, I'm a protein shake, 31 grams of protein, blah, blah, blah. And then at various times of the day, I would be like, okay, damn, I'm hungry. How much food do I have left? And I would have to judge the rest of my day by that. It's like, I get to 7 o'clock at night, I only have this left, so now this is what I get to eat. So that's maximum flexibility. My numbers might work out at the end of the day, but what do you see as maybe a hindrance or a danger to that?
Well, I think without some level of planning, you like you said, you got to the end of the day and you could have been without any food left to fit within your macros.
We're halfway through the day.
Yeah. And it also, I think, just psychologically, when we have it planned out, we're able to more adequately be like, well, I only have another hour before I can eat again. And we can space better. Those are the media things that I think of. But I mean, I've been in the same place, and I'll do that when I'm traveling. We didn't, now we have like, I can track on my phone, and I use Google Sheets. So if I have my phone with me when I'm traveling, I'll just enter. That's actually that's how I track now. I know where my macros need to be most of the time, and I eat and then log. But I eat most of the same things. Right. That's where the structure comes in. Right. Most of my meals are pretty much the same, except dinner varies a little bit.
And that is exactly, even with my little sticky note system, that's how I had to evolve to survive, so that you didn't get halfway through the day and not have any food left, or have only carbs or only protein. And so based on how I felt, I could say, oh, okay, I had a bagel instead of oatmeal, and that used more carbs, but that worked. It filled me up a little bit more, so I'm going to try that for a couple more days.
Right.
And then I could start planning almost esoterically, kind of after the fact, and that started forming some structure. But I was disciplined enough to be accurate in my tracking, and I'm still, number one, my performance goals drove me to want to be accurate. I'm also building curriculum for other people, and I'm writing books and articles, so I'm doing a lot of these things as kind of scientific experimentation. And so that was always the backbone that could keep me on track, even if I'm being maximally flexible.
Right.
What I would tell a client with that kind of a shoot from the hip mentality is, let's at least plan this out on paper, have some structure, then you can track like that just to make sure you don't forget anything you're eating, and maybe you do have some times of the day, times of the week that you need to deviate. Hey, you're in an airport, you're in a business meeting, you're gonna, exactly where you are. You can use an app certainly now. But that's what I mean by maximum flexibility. You can miss enough structure that you as a client, and I would guarantee, even looking back at my own success or lack thereof, had I had more structure, I'll bet I would have succeeded at my goals even more easily.
Well, so what's interesting to me is, no matter whether you're flexible or not, even if you're on the far end of the flexible continuum, there's still a level of structure. It's built in to the cake. It's in the recipe. So it's just then about finding that balance that's going to be appropriate for you. And to your point, I think it changes based on how long you've been doing it, what you're learning about yourself, how much knowledge and skill you've gained throughout the process already, and what you understand about food and your body. And it happens through practice. And I'm learning that. I mean, you and I, we're still learning about those things, because we still do track things and we write them down and we do experiments. And I think about how over the course of I'm going to call it a competitive career, because while I'm not competing in bodybuilding anymore, I have these endurance goals now. And what am I doing? I'm still tracking. My workouts have a structure. I know exactly what I'm going to do each day. I'm working with a coach who can provide that information for me, and then we talk about it. I will tell you, Joe, in between the time when I wasn't competing and I didn't really have any physical goals, and I wasn't like writing down a program for myself in the gym, and I'd go in the morning and be like, what am I going to do today? I felt so purposeless and aimless, and like I wasn't accomplishing anything. There wasn't any structure to it. The structure was that I knew I was going to go to the gym in the morning. But beyond that, it felt awful.
So this is another point. I think we can go all the way to the beginner again. You know, we said at the beginning of this conversation that we're gonna break this down and start from the beginning and build the process so that everybody can understand what flexible dieting really is. That person who just may not have any outwardly extrinsic competitive goals, but they want to look their best, they want to feel their best. This is where hiring a coach, a personal trainer, that's why these professions exist, because it is so relieving when you can put your process and progress in somebody else's hands and then feel like you got a partner who's managing that with you.
With us.
And for you and I, you know, we may not necessarily be doing that anymore in our careers, but we can be that person for ourselves, where we still give ourselves those goals. So here's a great example. Also at Tyler Mayer's house, because he has an in-body scanner. Over the years, I have occasionally gotten on there and just, you know, check out where I'm at, because prior to that, it had been way more than a decade. You know, I used to do hydrostatic underwater weighing for body composition measurement.
Did the calipers for a while.
Did calipers, DEXA scan. So I've got all that information from my 20s and 30s. Now I'm in my upper 40s. And I got on his in-body scan and I saw, whoa, I'm down 5 pounds of lean body mass. And I'm like, that just hurt.
Gosh, kicked in the gut.
How could I lose 5? And I knew that it happened. Like, I'm no longer squatting and deadlifting 500 pounds. I'm like, gosh, when you see that on paper.
Ouch.
So here's what happened. It made me make a change. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to tracking my food, damn it. Because obviously that's what needed to happen. So I brought my protein level back up to 2 times the RDA. And now I'm tracking consistently. And I hadn't done that in 10 years. I had not tracked my macros in 10 years.
I know you.
Right?
That's how long we've worked together.
But I maintained my body weight just fine. That was my goal. I was right there, just being flexible.
Stayed within a range.
So
But you would admit too. We had this conversation multiple times about your macros and protein being
too low.
Too low.
Yeah. And that's where the lean body mass was, falling off the table there. But so I go back out 3 months later to Tyler's, because now I've tracked my macros again for 3 months after a 10-year hiatus. And just by that simple behavior, my lean body mass was right back up to where it was. And now, a couple years later...
So did you do it this weekend?
I did.
Yeah.
And I'm still within 1 pound of being up there. And in the process, I had gone through a major surgery, all kinds of other issues that kept me out of the gym for about 6 months. But I'm still tracking my macros through these last couple years once I started that goal. So for people who are just getting started and saying, well, okay, I get it. I know what macros are. I know what macro-based tracking is. I know what flexible dieting is. Just having that structure of habitually tracking with objectivity, with accuracy, that's what gets you in the ball game so that you can make your goals easier.
So I just started with a brand new client, and she's done various diets in the past. She's got about 90 pounds to lose. And when I start with a client, typically I just want you to write down your food, track it. Because she filled out her intake form and she told me, like, this is what I usually have for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and I'm calculating those macros based on what she's telling me she eats. And I'm thinking, no, you're eating a lot more than that. If you're 90 pounds overweight, the amount that you're saying you're eating is not enough to maintain that weight, and she's gaining weight. So her email to me just today was, this was really eye-opening for me. I had no idea that I was eating so much. Little bit of structure, because she started writing it down, and now, like you said, she has a place to start. She's like, I don't like seeing that, but I know I need to.
And here's what's interesting. I've talked to researchers like Dr. Bill Campbell, the president of the ISSN, and he said, Joe, we know just in the equation of self-report studies on nutrition, we can just rely on about 30% under-reporting.
Yeah.
And now newer research has come out where they're saying it could be as high as 50% as an average.
Oh, man.
And I get that, because if you're not writing it down and you're not doing the math, you really don't know how much stuff is in the food you're eating. That bucket of theater popcorn, or that wrap that you think is so healthy at the restaurant that's full of cheese and sour cream.
Here's a really simple example. When I first started tracking, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. And this was something that I would tell my clients to do immediately when they would start writing down their food, is peanut butter. I was freaking blown away, because I would use a tablespoon instead of a scale. And oatmeal too, I would use a measuring cup instead of a scale. And there's a massive difference in those measurements. I mean, I'm still excited about that, because it blows my new clients away who have never done this before.
And here's what happens on the other end. So now you've got somebody who has tracked food for a while. They get it, so they get a little too comfortable. And it's like, I'll just kind of eyeball this and I'll do that. And as soon as we can pull people back into just a major focus on accuracy, things change. I mean, as soon as you get people back to, like you said, using an actual digital scale in grams instead of just measuring cups, I mean, big difference.
Agreed. Yep.
So let's pull back in, because we're trying to get these two sides together. Like, we got the structure.
The two sides
people,
of the same coin, though. They're on one thing.
Yeah, but they don't think so. So structure and flexibility. The other war that exists is that there has become this little subcult of people who think that flexible dieting is just a way to get any amount of crappy food you can into your diet.
Okay, can I be honest?
Yeah.
I am really close to that camp. Really freaking close to that camp. Because that's what I see. I mean, that's what I see happening and feel happening, and clients come to me and that's happening with them. And
well, on social media, certain hotspots, there are people who literally make fun of each other and yell at each other because, you should be eating donuts and you should be eating Pop-Tarts and you should be doing this. If you're not, again, you're so unevolved and you just don't get it, because as long as you do the math, you can eat these things.
that is just not true.
And even if it was, like, okay, let's say I could just get all of my macros from Twinkies and donuts with a little protein. Is that really my goal for my health and my physique?
How are you going to feel?
Yeah. So again, it's you have that ability to make those decisions because you're being flexible. But what's really going to get you to your goals faster? What's going to make you the healthiest person you want to be? You may have to just step back and say, what are my goals? Maybe I really need to list these. Yes, performance and my physique may be my primary goal, but does that mean my health goals are way over here? I don't have any health goals? Exactly. Of course not. How do you want to feel? How do you want to sleep? How do you want your immunity to be?
When you're
longevity.
Training.
Yeah. So again, that's just, again, such a false war to me, a fight that people, we should just be able to discount those people, but again, we're trying to get back to the basics.
Yeah.
We know our audience, and even years from now, people watching this video, they may have only experienced those people over there and they got sucked into that world.
Well, and I think the message is too, and it's a misguided one, is everyone should eat everything in moderation. And that just doesn't work for a lot of people. It doesn't. There are certain foods, and as as our clients learn to listen to their bodies when they have certain foods, because maybe they were told, go eat that Pop-Tart or that donut before your workout, and they end up with indigestion. But it's a high glycemic carbohydrate. It's perfect for a pre-workout meal, right? I think that clients need to consider whether that is actually in their best interest and in their service. Like I said, there are some foods I don't eat because they don't help me at all. And other people would say, oh, that's the perfect food in this sort of situation, and maybe it is for them, but some people are not good at being moderators. They're better at abstainers.
Yep.
And there are certain foods, like for me, that are salty, crunchy foods that I can eat just one, but then the bag is calling my name all day long. And it's that sense of urgency that I think people really need to begin to pay attention to and just ask, like, why would I even go there then? And is that rigid, or is it actually taking care of myself by not eating that food at all?
So let's compare notes.
Yep.
As two people who do this for a living, and we help other coaches do this. We have clients for decades that have gone through work with us.
Yep.
I wanna give a day in the life of how Joe eats, how Kori eats, and then we'll talk about, as clinicians, how we would advise brand new dieters to look at this entire field.
Okay.
So, I am tracking my macros now, so I do have certain goals I want to hit, but without an extremely pressing, rigid goal. I don't need to be a certain weight or body fat percentage at a certain time. I'm intentionally taking my time, giving myself a goal that is doable. So maybe a couple pounds a month of body fat loss that I'm working toward. And so I have those ranges that I'm looking at, protein, carbs, and fat. And I immediately reverse engineer that and say, okay, if I need this many grams of protein per day, carbs, fat, how many meals a day do I want to eat? So I'm instantly thinking of, meal timing, space between meals. There are things now that exist in the vernacular, like intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating. And we've both experimented with things like that. So I had to look back and say, okay, how will I feel my best? How do I make sure I'm not encumbered by hunger or any problems like that? And I'm getting the foods I like, still meeting my goals of being healthy. So all of those variables, even somebody who created a lot of this in the industry,
you still have to think about it.
I still have to do the same thing anybody else would do.
Yes.
So I made the decision that, I used to just wake up and just cram food in my body for breakfast because I'm there. I'm at home in the kitchen, and then I go to work. And then I realized, gosh, I'm not even hungry. This whole time-restricted eating, intermittent fasting thing is out. Maybe that's a good thing to try. And so I decided I'm just going to wait and go to work, and when I'm hungry, I'll eat breakfast. So got in the habit of doing that. And then I wait till I am hungry, and I just felt better. My morning felt better. And I did that years ago. Now I decided that since my daughter no longer needs to be driven to school, now I have this a little bit longer window of time. So what am I going to fill that gap with? And I decided, well, I could use a little extra cardio. So now I'm grabbing a V8 energy drink that has 13 grams of carbs. I could get a donut or something to be flexible, but this liquid carb that has at least vitamins, minerals, and all that, and I can sip on it, so I'm titrating those carbs in my body over the course of about 2 hours. Then I get to my office. I do 15 minutes of aggressive cardio because I just feel better, the oxygen, the blood flow. I have noticed that I even feel unbelievably better in the afternoon. I'm not tired and groggy and just
when you
focused,
get up and you
and
do
I do
some
that
movement.
cardio. Right. So
Can
then,
I just comment real fast?
Yeah, please.
Like energy density between a donut and a V8 juice.
right. But even if it was just like a third of a donut or something, but I could even do something like just a cookie, that might have the same amount of carbohydrate. But I made the decision. In my health value system, I decided I want to make better choices.
And that's changed over the years for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still...
health has been...
Well, I haven't gotten to my Reese peanut butter cups yet.
Oh, okay.
Those are in my day.
Oh, those are in
there. All right. But then during the summer, it just felt good, tasted good to get a protein shake for breakfast. So I would get frozen fruit in the blender, would make these great shakes for my wife and me every morning for breakfast. Got points for being a good husband. And I'm having, so same food every day. So the entire summer, even though I could flexibly get whatever I want, this just worked well. I liked it. It worked well. I felt good. It was healthy. It tasted amazing. So then winter comes. I'm like, okay, I don't want this frozen shake. I just came up from the basement gym and I'm cold. So I started doing oatmeal.
Something warm and hearty.
With protein powder. I cut up an apple, a little flaxseed oil, cinnamon, protein powder. And now that's been my breakfast ever since winter started. But it's always a half a cup of oatmeal. It's always an apple. And again, I'm tracking my macros intentionally. That foundation in my day means I now have a little pre-workout snack and a breakfast that just fits. It works. It's great. I can rely on that structure. So here's where some flexibility starts rolling in. Based on my hunger and when I may fit in my real training for the day, I may end up grabbing a granola bar as a snack, or I may look at the clock and say, it's only an hour until I should really have some lunch, and then I'll have a turkey wrap or something like that. So I may or may not have a snack. So that just gets charted. That's a decision I make as a point of flexibility. My lunch is typically the same things. I'm kind of into bagels now because I love certain airports. There's always like the restaurants you kind of gravitate to. In Chicago, there's the Great American Bagel Company. I just always get this turkey bagel in Chicago. Sandwich. So now I make those for lunch. And so again, I'm back to just turkey, bagel. That's my lunch almost every single day.
Yeah.
And as I roll through my day, then I get into the afternoon, and pre-workout for me, here's what's interesting. Because I'm paying attention, because I'm tracking my macros, I will get 2 Reese peanut butter cups as my pre-workout. Before I was tracking, I would get whatever I want. Could get this. Maybe it's just a piece of toast with some jam.
Extra 200 calories.
Could be anything. But now that I'm tracking, I'm like, okay, I know here's 20 grams of carbs, 10 grams of fat.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I know how my body's going to feel training. And then after my workout, I slam a protein shake. So it's just a scoop of protein and water that I'm going to get home. And as you said, for your day, mine's the same. I don't know what I'm going to have for dinner. I don't know if my wife has leftovers at home. I don't know if she has anything planned. I don't know if I'm just going to be scrounging through the pantry on my own. But then I've had so much of my day that has already been structured and planned, even though there are a couple points of flexibility. I can intellectually, cognitively make those changes if I want. I get home and I can have a flexible dinner that fits. And my day was fantastic. I had a perfect day.
Yeah.
Meeting my goals. So, because I'm tracking, you can see that there's more structure than just keeping a little sticky note in my pocket and winging it all day long.
You've got stuff in the cupboards and you're opening the cupboard and thinking, what am I going to eat?
Yeah. Looking at my notepad, then looking at the labels and, oh, this fits, this doesn't, whatever.
It has been... Because when did I start? It's been 20 years since I've done that.
Yeah.
What am I going to eat?
And here's the irony. For somebody who brought flexible dieting into this industry, 20 years later, I rely on structure more than ever because I just have learned, over 2 decades that makes my life easier.
Yes.
I can now be on cruise control, making less decisions, having less stress, having less instability in my energy and my hunger and my training, just by having these things pre-planned. Even though I'm I could absolutely change any of those at any time. I don't want to because I can rely on them. I don't have to spend all of my energy focused on that.
Well, and so here's where the flexibility comes in too. You've been traveling for the last few days. Your meals have not been the same.
No.
Not at all.
I got some pictures in my phone. I've been kind of logging so I can show those.
Right.
All different for sure. All different.
Yeah, but with the same principles in mind. So that's what it comes down to for me as well. I know what foods work well for me and which ones just are not going to be a part of my nutrition. Mm-hmm. For ever since I started competing, my pre-workout meals have always been rice cake or 2, depending on how intense my workout is going to be, with some nut butter and a little bit of jam on them, and my pre-workout powder. Every single morning. Mm-hmm. And I have always been a morning exerciser. Now, flexibility comes in when I was having to train like twice a day. So there may have been another small little snack in there. But right now, with the way that my life is and work and my cycling training, that's what happens. I get up, I have my pre-workout drink, and I'm actually sipping on that during my workout, but I usually have a couple rice cakes with peanut butter. I'll train, and that usually takes a couple of hours.
Because you're a beast.
Well, so
a couple hours of cycling.
There's stretching and there's meditation. So this is where more structure comes into my life. I know that if I don't meditate early and if I don't train early, it's probably not going to get done. So I recognize that.
It's in the book. It's on the schedule.
That is so ingrained in me now. It's like night workouts never actually happened. I remember when I was still living in Evansville that we would do those, but they were terrible.
They were great.
You loved them. I was like, make this end. And then I'm the one who had all the energy when I would ask you to train in the morning, and you're like, please stop. But so it varies from day to day depending on the intensity of my workout, whether I'm going to have like a mid-morning snack or can make it until lunch at noon. Because right after, I don't eat anything after my workout typically, and it's within an hour, then I'm making breakfast. That's my first big meal. And I've had this for as long as I can remember. It's my favorite meal of the day. It's egg whites and some other sort of protein like chicken or ground turkey and I don't measure my vegetables anymore. That is not something that...
It's a big step for you.
It's a big step. I don't measure my veggies. I throw a ton of kale, yellow squash, onion, mushrooms, broccoli, cauliflower in a big freaking skillet.
Interesting sidebar.
Okay.
They count. So for somebody who is...
They count, yes.
Somebody who is really needing accuracy, because this really trips people up.
Oh, yes. I'm glad that you're saying this.
This vegetable, that vegetable, this. You could get 30 grams of carbs
and I do.
In a salad, and if people think those are just freebies, you could really be painting yourself into a corner.
Eating a lot more than you think you are.
But for you don't have any pressing physical goals in terms of body composition.
I'm not trying to lose body fat.
So it's just a matter of that's just built into the equation for you, so you don't have to spend your time weighing and measuring those.
I don't need to spend time weighing and measuring my vegetables, and I typically eat the same amount every day, and I've already weighed. So no, is it to a T accurate? Absolutely not. But I have a good idea of what it is, and I'm not trying to lose body fat. I'm maintaining my weight and have for the last however many years. And then I'll usually have a starchy carb with that too, whether it's a couple rice cakes or a couple slices of sourdough toast, avocado. And I'm weighing all these things, the toast, the avocado. So that's my breakfast. It's my favorite meal of the day. Like I can't wait to sit down and eat that meal.
Breakfast is good. All my breakfast has been out this week, having other people make it for me, so it's been especially good.
But I will say this. This is something that when I was competing, there was no question that whether I was going to have a pre-workout meal or not. Because when I woke up in the morning, I was flippin' hungry. And one rice cake felt like a feast. Now, sometimes I wake up and I'm not hungry. I'll just have my drink and I'll stand there and I'll be like, I don't even feel like eating. So I won't. Now, if I were going on a 3-hour bike ride, different story. I'm going to eat whether I feel like it or not. Otherwise, it won't be a pretty picture. But if it's an hour long, just like low intensity bike ride at home, and I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat. So that's where the flexibility comes in. If it's been a super intense ride and I'm that day and I'm hungry mid-morning, sometimes I'll have a snack. Sometimes I'll make myself wait because I want a bigger lunch.
Similar to me. That's funny.
So I'm just like, water.
Yeah. Watching the clock. When can I eat? When am I gonna have a big lunch? Yeah.
Yeah, and the structure too, just in the life around that is like, okay, I have this much time till my next meal. What can I really focus on and to get me to lunch? And it's not like if it were fingernails on a chalkboard sort of hunger, I would go eat. Like, I wouldn't make myself wait. But that's the other thing that I will say is having some structure gives you the ability to kind of check in with yourself and be like, okay, I could eat, but where am I on the hunger scale? Like, is it really necessary? I mean, it would taste good, but do I really need it? And how long has it been since I last ate? Oh, I had breakfast an hour ago. Guaranteed my body has not used all that fuel. So then lunch, and it's typically always the same. It's a big salad. Lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers. Today it was roasted cauliflower, a little bit more avocado. And then the protein source will sometimes change depending on what I've prepped. It may be ground turkey, it may be chicken breast, it may be a can of salmon. I mean, that's the flexibility part. And then I am usually between 2 and 3 is I think my energy just gets lower at that time, and that's when I want a snack. So I usually have a snack. And then dinner is a little bit later. It's around 7. The snacks vary. So that's what's different in my day. Dinner, again, it's another big salad. Or it's my breakfast, but without the starch. And those are some of the principles. Like, I don't need the starch at night.
Yeah, you're making those decisions based on your goals.
Exactly. And since I train in the morning, that's when I need the bulk of my food between morning and 2 o'clock, and then I love the word titrate. I used that in another thing lately that
we each have those favorite words. So what's an amazing parallel between what you and I both do now is that I think we would both agree that this is exactly how somebody can use the best of flexibility and structure for the real goal, which is sustainability.
Yes.
Because how many people could say, yeah, I know everything you guys just said, but then they gain and lose 30 pounds, or they can never quite get there, and it's always a constant battle. And for us, working with our clients and our Diet Doc program owners who work with clients, even though we may have a much, much better recidivism rate than the general population, or statistically what's at large, any single person who has to go back and forth is somebody that shouldn't have to do that. I wouldn't say that's a failure, but that's a point where we need to say, look, that's why we're taking you down this path, is so you don't have to suffer through that. You don't have to lose that same 50-pound block of weight multiple times. Get it done once. And this is the word to me that kind of creates that path.
Line. Yeah.
It's work. It's just work.
It's effort.
You and I, we have to go buy those groceries. We have to prepare those foods. We have to, even though we say that having that level of structure helps us, it keeps us, more stress-free in our day. It still takes work to get that food there in front of us, and discipline to make those decisions, to check in, as you said, with ourselves and be self-aware. But it's an amount of work that is commensurate with the goal and the achievement. If I can have the physique I want, the health I want, the body composition I want, and that's the price you have to pay, it seems kind of easy. Right. It's work.
Well, and it's commensurate with the experience too. Because I think the perception of effort declines the longer you do it. Like, because it just becomes, it's what we do.
And I don't want to cross over into the psychological side, because we cover that in separate things. I can see you just like chomping at the bit. I'm going to go there.
Gears are turning. Yeah.
But let me give you a little example, because I'm traveling. So, I just got off a plane and here I am with you, and then I'm on a train tomorrow and then another plane. And so you mentioned that now that I'm on the road right now, like my days aren't the same. So I still have to make decisions. So the very first day, so Paul Ravella, that guy can eat.
I'm sure.
And he doesn't like to be hungry.
I've eaten with him before, yeah.
When I travel, I have a certain amount of food I take with me.
Yep.
I've got my protein powder for breakfast. I've got my little bags of trail mix and granola bars and protein bars. And I can live on just what I bring as long as I get one meal a day. If I get a sandwich or a chicken breast salad somewhere, I get everything else I need.
Something substantial.
But Paul's not like that.
No.
Paul's like, come on guys, time to go. Let's go. We're going to IHOP. We're going here. We're going there. Every meal is out, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the guy is pounding food. And Tyler Mayer is not far behind him. So we're at breakfast.
You're like, can I have some?
They're ordering, bacon and eggs and pancakes and waffles and all this stuff. And so our first breakfast out, I get the egg white omelet with turkey.
Yep.
And I get one pancake. Whereas Paul was like, oh, that looks pretty good. I'll have that. Stack. But I'll have 2 pancakes. Yeah. And then he's eating some of Tyler's toast and this. So we get to the second day and I'm like, okay, man, I'm like...
Are you like not even hungry when you're going out?
That's just it. So then, with even that amount of food, which is kind of a lot for me, I'm like, well, I just know I'm not going to be hungry for 5 or 6 hours.
Sure.
So 3 hours later, Paul's in the kitchen getting food and all this stuff, and I'm just done until dinner. I'm just done.
Yeah.
So I subsisted for the last 4 days on eating about 2 meals a day out, and then maybe a snack. And that's fine for me. Even this morning, after having that one pancake 2 or 3 days in a row and a sandwich here and there, I was like, all right, I just want 2 egg whites and a little bowl of oatmeal. That was my breakfast. I'm like, I'm checking out, guys. Like, I'm done. I got to get back to my normal routine here.
Yes.
And every single decision I made, there was always a little checklist. Like, what did I eat? When am I going to eat again? What's available? What's the best decision here? What fits my goals? And again, that may sound like restriction, but it's the life I want to live for the goals I have.
I think for a lot of people, Joe, it sounds like, I don't want to think about food that much. I've heard that a lot.
It's kind of automatic once you learn that language of nutrition.
That's what I've said. If you're an accountant, are you never thinking about numbers?
Everything is a number to you.
Right? I'm a psychologist. I'm a counselor. Am I never thinking about human behavior? Like, it just happens. Yeah.
So, when I get home, I will get on the scale that next morning, and after a week and a half of travel, I guarantee I will be probably about the same weight. Maybe down a pound, maybe up a pound, but it's not going to be a surprise because I'm keeping my food in check. And it is very automatic, and that's the whole point of flexible dieting. If I go all the way back 25 years to starting this whole movement, it's so that you learn it once, like riding a bike or playing a musical instrument. Once you learn it, you don't have to stress about it. You don't have to overthink it. When I talked about these decisions I was making on the road, it wasn't this laborious, anger-filled process of frustration.
Why do I have to do this?
No, it was just making it like, ding, 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 ding. This is what I ordered, and I'm ready. I'm making those decisions easily.
And it's not going to be like that, though, for people who are just starting out. It can feel laborious because it can take a lot of time to sit down and be like, I'm traveling, how do I want it to look? But like you said, tracking I have tracked for, I guess, over 20 years now. It's not laborious. It gives me data, and like I'm still learning about my body based on how my training has changed and how much movement I'm getting throughout the day, and my calories are different now than they were before based on my body composition and the endurance instead of, more of the resistance training. But I have a lot of clients who they don't want to track for the rest of their lives, and we talk about, how they're going to know that they're staying on track. There are other ways of monitoring, but it's always something they can come back to.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had clients who have lost over 60 up to 100 pounds who have decided, once they've reached their goal, and we kind of wean them off of tracking. It's like, okay, let's not track for 3 days out of the week. Now let's only track for 2. Now 1. Like, what are your go-to meals? The ones that are regular for you. It's funny, Ben and I, when we're like, what are we gonna have for dinner? The regular. Huh. He has his regular, I have my regular. It's my egg white omelet. But you can always come back to it. Tracking is a skill. It's not just something you do and
a tool.
A tool, yes.
And that reminds me of the 10 years I did not track.
Mm-hmm.
I successfully maintained my body weight within 5 pounds for 10 years. Then I made the decision that overcoming some injuries, I wanted to gain some size again, work on kind of a powerlifting base.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm through that, now I'm coming back down. And as a tool,
mm-hmm.
now that I've regained that lean body mass and I'm coming back down, now I'm tracking. And I guarantee as soon as I meet my goals,
mm-hmm.
I will no longer track anymore because it's in here. Your brain has that information, just like you with your vegetables.
Just like me with my veggies.
So as a way of wrapping up, what would you want people to know about structured flexibility? Because I intentionally coined that term a few years ago to try and bridge this gap. We know structure is important, flexibility is important.
Yeah.
So if we have structured flexibility, is there anything left that we have not exhausted?
We've covered a lot, Joe. I just want to come back to that it's a continuum. Everything is. Without any structure, you're operating in chaos land. Because you don't have anything to latch onto. There's no guidelines, guide wires. There's no, there's nothing to go on.
Yeah, I look at it as equal parts of the same thing. You mentioned 2 sides of the same coin. I have to have structure because that helps me. I have to have flexibility because that helps me. And I can marry those 2 things together, use whatever emphasis I need for that day. Certainly as I'm traveling now, I'm really relying on flexibility, but with as much structure as I can do inside of that traveling framework.
Yeah, that's well said. I am not traveling, but this is a different schedule for me, like tonight as we're recording this. I haven't eaten since 2.
We're heading out to eat. So
right, and that's 5.5 hours. That's not typical for me. But when I left, I thought it's probably going to be a while before I eat again. You're gonna be okay.
All right.